about Deion Sanders, like he
about
wrote,
Deion's comments.
yeah.
Yeah. So last week, actually it came up not this past Saturday, but the Saturday prior. Comments. I want to believe that it was comments that Deion Sanders brought up again about HBCUs playing bowl games outside of the Celebration Bowl.
Got it.
And Commissioner Charles McClendon from the SWAC was asked about it during the Jackson State. Who were they playing that week? Was that Mississippi Valley State? I want to say 2 weeks ago. They was being asked about it during that game. He gave us insight, basically saying that they can't compete in FBS games. But my thought was that's not what Deion was asking for this time. Because, of course, if you go back to 2020, that was something he talked about back then. But I digress. What it seems as though that Coach Sanders was talking about, and he talked about it during the SWAC weekly press conference, not today, but last week, where he discussed that there should be a potentially a second all HBCU bowl game. Why? Because bowl games generate revenue. And how great would it be for another revenue generating stream for HBCU football to bring into their respective conferences? So, of course, he talks about how great it would be, talks about, of course, how he could probably talk to his buddies, potentially his buddies over at Pepsi, to be a sponsor for the game. Now, if you ask D Nash, how do I feel about that? Logistics aside, I think that would be a wonderful idea. To have it as a situation where the HBCUs and the respective conferences would have another opportunity to draw in revenue. Now, would you include the likes of the Tennessee States and the A&Ts and the Hamptons? That's something that would have to be discussed. And I don't know necessarily if those three institutions would want to, because of their potential to want to compete for an FCS championship, right?
Right.
But what if it's tempting enough? I know that game won't have as high of a payout potentially as the Celebration Bowl. But again, there are a lot of logistical things that need to go through, that need to happen in terms of sponsorships and agreements from the NCAA. And I'm actually in the midst of writing an article about that right now. Because during his Sanders' plea, he actually made a plea to the media to, hey, help me out with this.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Prime? I'm going to help you out with this. We're going to talk about exactly what needs to be done in order to make this happen, and see if this can happen. But my thing is, of course, is one, well, I'll talk about it in the article. Once it's up and ready, you can most definitely come to Hero Sports and check it out. Well, everything will be explained in there on what needs to be done. But for once, well, I should say again, this is another situation which Deion Sanders has a plan or has an idea that I'm not necessarily thinking is far-fetched, and would actually love to see it, especially if HBCU sports fans will be willing to support it.
You know what? That's not a bad idea. That's really not a bad idea, because here's one thing. All right, we can get Jackson State. Let's just, for the sake of the argument, just skip ahead, right? Fast forward. Have Jackson State, if we were to have it this year, have a second one this year. Have Jackson State Central play for the Celebration Bowl title in Atlanta. I wouldn't know what you would call the second bowl game. Maybe have it before the Celebration Bowl, obviously. Have some, like, maybe a game where you have Florida A&M matched up against maybe Howard, based upon the conference standings, the particular standings in the respective conferences. That wouldn't be a bad idea. And have that game out in Charlotte or New Orleans, right? So if you have that a week before the Celebration Bowl in Atlanta, those are two, Charlotte and New Orleans, especially New Orleans, those are two hot spots for African-American fan bases.
Yeah.
So hey, I mean, Charlotte, I call Charlotte Atlanta Junior, but Charlotte not being that far from Atlanta, maybe a 3.5-hour drive at that. Why not? Why not? I mean, FAMU fans will travel. They've proven that over and over again. And I don't think Howard would mind traveling down to Charlotte or maybe New Orleans. They're bougie enough. Might as well. So how fans base will hate me for that, but it is what it is. I said what I
Hey,
said.
Scott said that, not me. So
I
just
said,
so you know, Howard fans.
hey, to pull a Nini, I said what I said. Now, moving on.
But I will say this, right?
Uh-huh.
So Coach Sanders' idea is to have it around New Year's Eve or maybe even the day before. So after the Celebration Bowl.
Yeah,
Because my thing is, if you have it before, you
Mhm.
might end up interrupting, you might end up interrupting a team like a Florida A&M who has aspirations of being in the playoffs. You might interrupt their
Oh,
playoff
he's talking about
hopes.
after. Okay, I got it. He's thinking
Yeah,
after they compete in the playoffs. Okay, I got you.
yeah,
Okay.
but see, that's another thing too, right? Because would a team want to play an additional game after participating in the playoffs?
Yeah. See,
How would you work that? That's something that would logistically
yeah.
have to be worked out and agreed upon by the various municipalities that are involved in this
Now, would they
situation.
make money in the playoffs? Now, I think you told me, or you or Mo Carter 2 weeks ago told me, educated me on the travel and the logistics for playoff. If you go on the FCS
Mhm.
playoffs, don't they tend to lose money because
They
they have to
do.
pay?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I
you have to
thought.
pay. Of course, you got to go ahead and open up your facilities and have it open, but you also got to pay expenses to participate in the playoffs.
Mhm.
But then also, most teams, actually not most, but teams got to make bids in order to host a playoff game.
Right.
So that's another thing that you got to deal with too, as it pertains to participating in the playoffs. But again, with the likes of A&T, Tennessee State, and Hampton that already participate in conferences that are already looking to play for those types to pay for a championship. That's something that they would really have to think about. And then, of course, you have a situation where MEAC and SWAC will potentially come in as at-large bids for the playoffs too, and how that will work in terms of having another bowl game, who will participate, and where and why.